Advancement Project is a nonpartisan national civil rights organization. We have a component which is a voter protection component, and it supports community-based efforts to increase civic participation, improve election administration, and remove structural barriers to election participation in low-income and minority communities. My comments this morning will focus on voter suppression tactics referred to as voter caging, and Advancement Project's voter protection efforts to combat this practice. So I'm going to just give you a definition of what it is, and I'll expand on it. Voter caging is a private voter challenge device that has historically been used for partisan purposes, often with the pretext of improving the quality of public voter registration lists and ensuring eligibility of newly registered voters. However, the device is often used in a racially discriminatory manner and undermines the work of trained election officials who have the authority, personnel, and duty to maintain the accuracy of voter registration lists and ensure that only eligible voters remain on the rolls. If left uncontrolled and unchecked, voter caging permits partisan takeovers of voter eligibility determinations and thus elections, and at a minimum causes substantial disruptions of polling place operations on election day. So basically, voter caging is a partisan discriminatory attempt to challenge voters of color. The term derives from the use of politically motivated direct mail caging techniques to target voters. The biggest target of the practice are minority voters, especially those with propensity to be loyal to the Democratic Party. The most notorious offender is the Republican Party. With one type of caging, a political party sends unregistered mail to addresses of registered voters. If the mail is returned as undeliverable because the mail is not forwardable, because, for example, the voter refuses to sign for it, the voter is not present for delivery, the voter refuses to accept registered mail, or the voter is homeless, the party uses that fact to compile caging lists and to challenge the eligibility of registered voters, arguing that because the voter could not be reached at the address, the registration is fraudulent. Taken that a political party challenges the validity of a voter's registration, for the voter's ballot to be counted, the voter must prove that their registration is valid. The use of media is a very important tactic in voter caging operations. Normally on the eve of the filing of challenges, the voters, a press conference is called to announce the filing of thousands of these challenges. For instance, in 2004, the Republican Party employed broad partisan challenges to tens of thousands of voters in Florida, Nevada, and Ohio. There, they claimed that the challenges were necessary to combat the widespread voter fraud on the rolls. Advancement Project countered the fraud claims were a mere pretext to conduct voter suppression efforts on the basis of race in violation of the law. In addition, Advancement Project in 2004 published a report to state and local election officials on the urgent need for instructions for partisan poll workers, and documented reports of thousands of challenges being submitted in additional states throughout the country, including Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Nevada. Voter suppression and voter challenges have a history, a long history in this country. After the Civil Rights War, after the Civil Rights War, there were many state legislatures that adopted challenge statutes to deny the franchise to black voters based upon skin color. For instance, in 1865, Florida's legislature indicated that it wanted to deny blacks the right to vote by adopting a state constitution that restricted the right to vote and to hold office to white men. In 1859, an Ohio law entitled An Act to Preserve the Purity of Elections was amended to provide for challenges based on a voter's possession of a visible admixture of African blood. While these constitutional statutory provisions were ultimately struck down, the challenges continue to be used in a discriminatory fashion today. most states, or all the states in this country, have challenge statutes that are really used to, what we believe is to prevent eligible voters from really participating in the election. Well, the states have gotten very sophisticated, and many of these states are controlled, their legislatures are Republican controlled. For instance, in Ohio, rather than having a hearing, the law now says that if you are challenged and the challenge is successful, then you no longer even need a hearing. You can be removed from the poll. You can be removed from the list. In the event that you are challenged and they cannot determine, then you're required to cast a provisional ballot. A provisional ballot, whether you know very much about provisional ballots or not, are what we consider unequal ballots. There's no guarantee that your provisional ballot is going to count. In addition, Florida now requires challengers to have only a good faith belief to issue a challenge to a voter rather than personal knowledge. So basically, before, you had to know something about the voter. You had to say, Mr. Jones used to live next door to me. He no longer lives there. Therefore, we're challenging him. Now, you don't have to have that. You just have to have just a good faith belief. In addition, Pennsylvania now can have partisan poll watchers. They're no longer required to remain in their precincts. They can move all over the county. So therefore, now you can challenge voters all over, and certainly a much larger number of voters. And what do we recommend? We recommend right now that election officials immediately put into place procedures to protect voters' rights and to reduce any chance that aggressive use of challenges will result in chaos in the polls on election days, chaos that will lead to voter suppression. Finally, one of the core strategies that we have undertaken is really to do public requests on public records requests. And what that means is that we want to know in advance who's making public records requests for the list. In Ohio, where the political parties initially had to send out the list, now the election officials send out return the mail. If it's returned, then political parties can then get that information. But we want to know who's requesting that information, because that will give us a heads up in terms of what they intend to do with that information. So as members of NBLSA, you ask who's going to take the weight. Well, the weight is going to be taken by all of us. All of us have to be vigilant. All of us have to pay attention to the voter rolls, to your registration. Don't take for granted that just because you're registered that you will actually end up on the rolls the day of the election. You need to be vigilant. You need to make sure that your name is on the list, not the day before, but a week before. You need time to determine if in fact there's going to be a problem and that you can address it in time to vote a regular ballot. We encourage all of the members in NBLSA to participate and get out the vote efforts, and as well as the voter protection efforts. We often hear that the last two presidential elections, were stolen. And we can't validate that for sure, but I do know one thing, and this is one thing that my senior attorney has said to me. He's, in terms of election, there's three things, and if you think about election being stolen, think about your personal property, something that you value being stolen. And if it was stolen, number one, you'd like to know who stole it. And number two, you would like to make sure that that the person who stole it never has that opportunity to steal it again. And so you're going to be very, very vigilant about it. So it's not enough to say that the election was stolen, therefore I'm not going to do anything about it. I think it's more important at this point that as new attorneys, law students, that you become aware of how it is that you can help to protect the vote in your community. That's who's going to take the weight. We're all going to take it. Thank you.